Good morning. Hemshel Ayin Beis, volume 3, at the bottom of page 1275. Okay. So on Friday, I gave somewhat of a summary of the flow. I'll just repeat it briefly. This whole volume 3 began with the discussion of the last two words in the verse, after explaining the whole beginning of the verse, V'yidaita yom v'shavesa levavecha ki havayu elikim b'shamayim mal v'aretz metochas. So the last two words are ein oid. So after explaining at length in volume 2 all the words of the opening of the verse, or all the way to the last two words, which is all about the unity, which is the theme of Ayin Beis, the unity and the interface between Havaya and Elikim, between divine and existence, and the divine that's beyond existence, and the divine within existence, both Shamayim and Mal, or it's Metochas, and a form of Yadaita and Hayayim, day and night, Simtsum and Gilui, ultimately to explain how everything in existence, even the lowest levels, become connected to the highest levels, even pre-Tzimtzum. So the final step in this process is Ein Oid. And he explained that Ein Oid is not just that the divine will radiate through Elikim, that even the divine that goes through concealment, the concealment will reveal Elikus godliness, but that the very concealment itself, the letters, the Kalim themselves, are also a divine expression. So the union goes even deeper. It's not just that which the levels that are concealed will see also that which is revealed, but they themselves reveal a dimension of the divine that's even higher than revelation itself, which is essentially the etzem. Now, the Rebbe Rashab then, of course, began developing this further. And that's what we're in the middle of really coming to understand in the context of all of Ayin Beis. That the very tzimtzum, or the way he put it, the Eish Sarashimu, the very letters of the impression, they themselves reveal and express the divine, as we learned and we're going to learn. Now, to explain that, the Rebbe Rashab first began with Havai Yechatu Merivov and asked a bunch of questions on page. I'm referring now to page 1210. What I just summed up was from the beginning, 1207 till 1210. And 1210 and 1211, he asked questions on Havai Yechat Meriva, which I'm not going to go over right now. We're going to get back to it a lot later. Basically, we'll be by page 1287. Now we're 1275. Another 12 pages is going to go back to Havai Yechat Meriva. And then he began the discussion of Gan Eden and Elam Haba. Gan Eden and Elam Haba, which is essentially reflective, as we know now, of our work in this world. So there's Gan Eden on its own, that's part of creation. It's higher than the revelation of existence itself, the Elamus, but it's still part of revelation, part of the Vayita Hashem Elikim, it's Havaya Elikim. But then comes another level of the Aveda that we do, which is our work from below, which you can see already is transforming existence. And that brings a whole new energy into Gan Eden. But then there's the reward that will be lost in the future. And then there's the question, what about in this world before we get to Gan Eden? So that became the theme that we already reviewed a number of times last few weeks. And that led into the whole discussion. To understand that, we have to understand the process of actual avodah. That the growth through that we make Gan Eden grow even more than on its own. So we have to understand, where does that growth come from? That growth is our avodah, so-called the Gan Eden within us. Zah, the trees that grow, which is our emotions, our emotional growth and our cognitive growth, and the cognitive affecting emotions all develop a deeper relationship and generate higher revelations of the divine in Gan Eden, all the way to the very etzem, to the highest levels that we've been discussing. But then to fully, the picture, he said, therefore you need basically two sides to it. You need the Maisa mitzvahs, the actions that we do, would generate the etzem, but you need it to come in a revealed way, and in a way that expands our boundaries, and that's through Simcha Shal Mitzvah. So the Kalim of the mitzvahs, they reach all the way into the core essence, because they're higher than the energy. But the Kalim have to come with Oyer, and the Oyer is the Simcha Shal Mitzvah, and all the Kavanas, the intentions, Ava V'yira, all the way to Ava B'chol Meidecha, Mesiras Nefesh, Ava Rabba B'tainugim. All that makes not just that we're experiencing the divine, but it also fills us up in a revealed way. So Gan Eden is a result of the kavanas of the energy. Without Maisa, the kavanah doesn't achieve anything. But only actions. Without the kavanah, also you don't get the revelation of Gan Eden. That sums up in detail, and we spoke about it in detail, how the emotions grow, the cognitive that gives birth to emotions, and ultimately how the emotions catapult the mind, Chachma and Bina, and then Chachma, to gaze at Arich and Atik, the Shin Ayin Beis, and then you have both sides of the picture. But you need to have the Maisa Mitzvahs simultaneously with all of it. It goes hand in hand. So that just summed up all the way till the point that we got to. I'll just go to where we are, to the bottom of page 1271. That's where he summed all that up. In 1272, he said, so now let's go back to, so why then do we say that there's no schar in this world? There's no reward in this world. Gan Eden, there's reward. We don't have to wait till the future, Elam Haba. So he went back and said that mitzvahs, even though they do generate Pnimiyas Ha'er, which transcends the hierarchy and structure of existence, but there's still levels of that revelation. And to understand that, we've gotten into the discussion of how even Atzmi also has levels of how much it's revealed, but now it's not the revelation or concealment based on the structure of existence. It's more the revelation and concealment based on what he called later Medida Atzmis, a core fundamental measure within the Mashpia himself. And he brought here now the difference between halacha or Teira and Ava V'yira from the Kunta Sachan that explains the Priyetz Chaim. That says that halacha captures the essence, the muchus of Chachmei Law, while Ava V'yira of the Malachim does not. It only has a reflection of it. The same thing with mitzvahs. That mitzvahs also, on one hand, they capture the very essence of the divine, but they come into physical items, just like halacha comes into language that we can relate to. Halacha is Gashmi, Dvarim Gashmi. That's why it's Chachmei Law as it manifests in the Eir HaNeshama of Bria Yitzira and B'derech Maiver through Asiyah. The same thing with mitzvahs. Mitzvahs also have two dimensions. There's the mitzvah Ratzon Hashem, Yud K in the mitzvah, the Mem Sadiq, but that's concealed. That's why it's a Mem Sadiq Chiluf, through the exchange of the Mem and Sadiq. And then there's the Vav K that's revealed, is how the mitzvahs, we experience them. We actually see a physical esrig, a physical lulav, and the other mitzvahs that he said that manifest in a way that's revealed, and that's the Vav K of the mitzvahs. So even though in the Vav K also lies the Yud K, like he said, that also the Pnimiyas Ha'er is also with the mitzvah is also drawing down that, like we said clearly. Mitzvah draws the Pnimiyas Ha'er, but the Pnimiyas Ha'er remains somewhat concealed, and what's revealed is the way the mitzvah actually manifests in a physical form. Yeah. Similar, like he says, same thing is that mitzvah, just like halacha, originates in the core of the divine wisdom and then manifests in Eir Neshama through the kelim of Atzilus. The same thing, a mitzvah, originates in the core Ratzon Elyon of Hashem, and that manifests in the Vovke in the actual physical mitzvah, like the halachas that also manifest in physical terms and expressions. And that explains why it's Mem Sadi, because you cannot, I'm reading the bottom of 1275, How is it possible that a mitzvah can come Dvarim Gashmi? So the answer is because the Eishis Yudke are exchanged by the letters Mem Sadiq that allows them to be dressed up in garments. And then they can come down to the level of mitzvahs Gashmi, physical mitzvahs. So that's Nistaris Vaniglis, Chinis Yudke Baba Hester Vehelam. Okay, the level of Yudke in the mitzvahs comes in the form of covered and concealed, and the Vovke comes in the form of revelation. It's revealed. That's where we reach the bottom of page 1275. So I'm going to continue now from there. So he says,
is there any chance you'll take any questions now?
If you want to ask a question, go ahead.
I have two questions, and the first is this idea of Medidus, the measuring within Atzmus of how the Eibusher is going to reveal himself, and so essentially dole out his energy into the Olamos. I think we talked about that being Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and I had a question about the notion of the Eibusher differentiating himself, if you will, even in his own mind, Lifnei HaTzimtzum, because that seems like some sort of Tzimtzum itself. He's mitzamtzam himself in terms of measuring how much of himself he's going to give to the world and exactly how, etc. It seems like it's like a tzimtzum before the tzimtzum, which kind of doesn't make sense. That's question one. Question two is this process that we're talking about here, how the Or Atzmius, the divine light, comes into the worlds and all the way down to Asiya. And of course, he prepared the Torah, mitzvahs, halachos, etc. So, is that something that happened at the first instant, the moment of time when God created the world, or is this an ongoing process? Every moment, there's a measurement, there's an assessment, and a delivery. The Hishtalshalus is ongoing process, if you will.
Well, the short answer to both your questions, yes and yes. There is the concept of tzimtzumim before the tzimtzum arishin. The Rebbe actually spoke about it at length in Yud Shvat Tavshim Mem Hey. So there's the concept that God, just as he has the power to create the tzimtzum arishin, he has the power to create already before the tzimtzum certain internal mechanisms,
distinctions,
so to speak. Mm-hmm. The problem is that we have to know how to understand them, because before the tzimtzum we can't really talk much. It's all figurative and very it's just for us to be able to imagine, you can say, things that are happening there. God allocates, and like I said, envisions, or he considers, deliberates, determines, and then allocates resources. So this is not the place to go into it. I spoke about this at length many times about how there's levels before the tzimtzum. It's not for here because it's not really. I mean, this is what he's saying here has already been discussed much earlier in Ayin Beis in the beginning, and I discussed it much more at length there. So this is not exclusive to what we're learning here. So I'm not going to go into that right now. As far as the second question, yes, it's a constant process. There's no time. It's all constantly happening. There's Erein Sof Lifnei Tzimtzum, there's Tzimtzum, there's the Kav. This is a continuous conceptual process that's happening every moment. And basically, the question is, which level are we connecting with? Through our avodah, that's why I always say you can't talk about it mechanically or mathematically. You have to ask yourself, which level are you connecting with in your avodah? You can connect to a Lifnei Tzimtzum experience, you can connect to a Kav, you can connect to Tzimtzum, you can connect to different worlds. Each one has its own particular way that connects. Depending, you have to find in your avodah some example of these levels. That's the key to be able to really understand and also experience or relate to these levels.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Now he says like this. So the last line on page 1275, you can find the pages at ayinbeis.com. V'hine. And now, Nizbar le'il, so after you finish Yud Kei Vav Kei, says like this. It was explained earlier, the Sheirish HaKelim hu b'chinas ha'er ha'meir la'atzmei. You recall earlier, when he spoke about the Sheirish HaKelim and Sheirish ha'er, so he said that Sheirish ha'er is from the air that God wants to radiate to another. The Sheirish HaKelim is rooted in the air as God radiates to himself, or as the air radiates to itself. Then he went even deeper and said that it originates in the Helam Atzmi. So I'm reading, if you want to go back to where this was all page 1270, 1269, but especially 1270, the top of 1270 and 1271. So in other words, it goes like this. The idea of containers, which means to contain the energy or to receive the energy, is rooted in the higher in a higher place than the energy itself, because it's coming from the power of concealment, which is not the Ur as it radiates, but it's the Ur as it's internal, and in there lies the intention that it should come into Kelim. So exact, I think he says, let me just see where exactly is that language. I think it was on 1269 where he said it specifically. Let me just see something here.
1268.
1268?
Yeah.
Okay.
Toward the
Yeah,
end of it.
right. The Atzmus Muhusa. Yeah, later he says it's Helama Atzmi.
Toward the end of the paragraph on first paragraph on 1268. It's in the parentheses.
Yeah, it's before that. It's but as Shima had yeshba gam b'chinas pnimis ha'ed dahainu ma'ed ein sof shekedem aleis harotzen u'kamoishu la'atzma yadayim. How it's still internal. Sharigam ha'ed u'nistamtim nisam kidum.
In that same paragraph in 1268, finishing the first part, he's saying it clearly. וזהו דשרש הכלים הוא מעצמוס ומהוס אין סוף ברוך הוא, ושרש הארץ מבחינת ספשטוס האר.
Yeah. Okay, good. So now he's going back to that. So he said, okay, so we learned earlier, Sherish Hakem Er Amer La'atzmei. V'zeu Gamkein. We're going to turn the page now to 1276. Zel Gamkein Sherish HaMitzvos. So now he's connected. This is also the root of mitzvah, Shehem B'chinas Kelim. Because we learned that the mitzvahs are the level of Kelim. He said that clearly. If you want to know this, where he began that was all the way back in the question. That the mitzvahs are Kelim. On page 1266 at the bottom and 1267. So the mitzvahs are kelim. V'zehu shebechlal im b'chinas ha'pnimius, and that's why we say that the mitzvahs are in general level of pnimius, because mitzvahs is not chitzenius. What's chitzenius? Chitzenius is the physical world. Deimim tzamei achai, but a mitzvah is carrying pnimius hakavona, the pnimius of what the Eibishter wants. That's why the mitzvah is like kelim. The Ur is the Ur that radiates outward, is the Ur that's relates to existence. The Pnimius Ur that mitzvahs generate is connected to the Pnimius of what the Eibishter's purpose of all it is. Like we learned about halacha, the difference in halacha and science, for example, and nature. So like we said earlier, the gam vavke sheba mitzvah, because of the vavke, as the mitzvah manifests in a physical form, it's only manifesting in the physical, but it's really Pnimis Eir that manifests in the Chitzenius Eir. Okay, so what do we know from this? So the mitzvahs like Kalim are rooted in the Eir that Meir La'atzmai. What he's calling here Yudke. Okay, so now we can the Gamnis Boyd, and was also explained the Shoshan who b'chinas Helma Oyer. Now he's going to the deeper. Remember, I said that first he said that Kalim are rooted in Etzema Oyer, Meir La'atzmei. Then he said more on top of page. If you look at that, that was 1268, as you just pointed out. On top of 1270, he said he goes like this, even deeper. The Elyam Yeshlema on the fifth line, the Milo, the Etzem Hashem b'chinas Helama Shalamayla b'chinas Hagil Legamri, Begam Yeshlemer that is rooted in Helama Atzmi. So he's now going even deeper. Not even in Oyer, he's saying Gamnis Boyer, the Shoshna b'chinas Helama Oyer. Shuzeh b'chinas Hu. Remember this Hu Ushmoi. What he said there at the end of that paragraph. If you look there, he says, "I'm b'chinas Shmoi. I call about b'chinas Er." Okay, so I asked the question then they said, if you look, where did he say? The level of Hu that's higher than Shmoi. He said that as well. There he says the level of Shmoi. But then afterwards he says the level of Hu that's higher than Shmoi. I don't see it right now, but fine, I'll find it shortly. Okay, so that's the level of Hu. The Gam b'chinas Helama Atzmi. So these are the two things he added. After saying it's Etzema Eir, he said it's rooted in the level of Helama Eir, and then in b'chinas Helama Atzmi, even higher than that. Yeah. At the bottom of page 1269, he said, he said the bottom of 1269. And then even deeper in Helama Atzmi. Just to refresh your memory, our memory, what is he saying? That the truth is, in Oyer itself, which is a Gilui, the mitzvahs are rooted in Pnimis Ha'er that radiates to himself. Why do you need to say that? Because at the end of the day, as we said, we want both things. We want mitzvah, we want the kalim and Eir. We don't just want kalim. We want also Eir. But the type of Eir that the mitzvah relates to is, like I spoke about, is the Pnimis HaKavana, so-called the Pnimis Ha'er, in the intention of God, of the creator, or like the Pnimis Ha'er within the artist, not within the art. Or the Pnimis Ha'er within the person who's building the home, not just the wisdom, the Eir that goes into creating the home. So you want an Eir, you also want to have that Atzmus Dika level, Atzmus Ha'er. But if you go deeper, where's the Atzmus Ha'er rooted, and therefore where the Kalim rooted, they're really rooted in the Helam, in a level that's higher than Gili altogether. That's why that when it's concealed, the concealment itself is coming from somewhere. So it's not just that the Kalim relate to the Pnimis Ha'er, they also relate to the, even deeper, to the very power of God concealing himself. And all the way to Helam Atzmi is the fundamental concealment, what he called Yechelis, on top of page 1270, Helam Atzmi. So it's not altogether, it's altogether not even the gather of Helam. It's the Yechelis Atzmus, God's capacity, like he says afterwards, the Kol Yochel on page 1270, that the Kalim reveal the Kol Yochel of the Eibishter to create something unlike himself. Oyer, even though Atzmus is distant from Oyer equally is just as distant from Oyer as he is from Kalim, but Oyer makes sense, he said afterwards. If you look at the beginning of paragraph, the second paragraph, 1270, he says, Oyer makes sense. Moving, he says, because it makes sense that Oyer reveals godliness, the grandeur of godliness. But if you want to have, it says, we have to say it's Kol Yochel, because he's creating something unlike himself. Because a Keli does not have a similarity to godliness. It's like the Yesh HaNivra. And therefore they reveal the Helam Atzmi of that's within in the Yechelis, he says. Helam Atzmi. That's what we learned. V'yesh Leimer. So now he's going to apply this to mitzvahs. That this level we're talking about now is what mitzvahs are, the supernal will, God's will, that's higher than Chachma Bina. Chachma Bina is God's wisdom and understanding. It still manifests in some form of comprehension. And this is the Keitza Sheyud that's higher than the Yud K Vav K. Yud K is still a form of Gili, except it's a Gili La'atzme, Hanistoris. Yud K is Chachma Bina. But it's within the Mashpia to himself. Vav K is how the Mashpia relates to the student. But there's a level higher than Yud K. It's the Keitza Sheyud, that's the point on top of the Yud, that is higher than Chachma Bina. And that's the Ratzon Elyon that's higher than Pnimi Sa'ir. So you'd have like this, a mitzvah, therefore, really you could say three things. Vovke is the Chetzenius of mitzvah that carries the Pnimius of the mitzvah in Gashmis, the physical mitzvah. Yudke is the Pnimius Sa'ir that remains concealed and you only have it through Mem Sadiq in Ad Bash, the Chiluf, the exchange. And that's the Etzem Ha'ir that radiates to himself. And then there's a higher level, the Helam, and even higher, the Helam Ha'atzmi, and that's the Ratzon Elyon in the mitzvah. That's not even radiating to himself, it's just what God wants. It's not even a Gili of Chachma Bina to the Mashpia himself, it's higher than that. And that's the point above the Yud. So that is the point, Yud K and Vav K. V'yesh Leimer, and you can say the Kol Zeh Bo B'Bchinas Chiluf, the Asius Mem Sadiq. And all this comes into the state of this exchange to the letters Mem Sadiq by Deha Ischalfus Dafke. And it's specifically, explicitly through this exchange from Yud K to Vav to Mem Sadiq, Boim Lamata B'Mitzvos Maisius. That it comes below in Mitzvos Maisius. What he's adding here is not just the Yud K is manifested in the Mem Tzadik, but also the Keitze Shel Yud, the Ratzon Elyon, which is completely higher than any revelation. It's God's will. It's not even a revelation of wisdom and understanding Chachma Bina to himself. All that is part of the Mem Tzadik, the exchange, and that's what allows it to come down into mitzvahs gashmi, maisius, into actionable mitzvahs. That when we do a mitzvah, when you take a lulav, an esrog and a lulav, and you shake it on sukkahs, what you're doing is you're actually manifesting. Number one, besides the Vav K of the actual physical mitzvah, the Yud K, which is God's wisdom within it that radiates to himself, and God's will that's even beyond radiating altogether, beyond illumination, beyond revelation altogether. All that is being manifested on mitzvahs maisius, and that's because the Yud K turned into a Mem Tzadik that allowed it to then manifest in physical, in the Vav K, in a physical form in the Vav K. Yeshlemer, he adds now, remember the Rebbe Rashab is constantly speaking on several tracks. Now, he's speaking how it is down below. He's talking how it is Lamaila, all the way in Shei to Shosheh before the Tzimtzum. So he says, V'yeshlemer the Komayken Gambi Shtalshus Lamaila. The same thing you could say, similarly, is the Shtalshus Lamaila, you also have these levels. In other words, not just the mitzvahs maisis below, in the levels above, I'm assuming, he says ishtalshlus, that means usually that's after the tzimtzum. But he's probably saying is that on the higher levels, when you talk about the Yud K Vav K as in Atzilus, you also have these levels going on. That the way it manifests as it radiates outward carries within it that which radiates within, and all the way that which is even higher than revelation. The reason he's probably saying this, the reason he's probably saying Shtalshus Lamaila, because since he's going to be leading us back to Gan Eden, where all this is happening ruchnius, that probably there too, the mitzvahs we do are generating energy in Gan Eden in this form and fashion. That we have combination of etzem and gili. I'm assuming that's why he add this parentheses, but we'll soon see whether he actually, I think we'll understand it shortly. But let me finish till the end of the paragraph, and then I'll stop for questions. The yesh b'zeh be'emes, and in truth, in this you have kol b'chinas ha'atzmus. You have all the whole level of atzmus. Rak shebo b'chinas islapshus. However, it comes in a form of islapshus because it's not atzmus in its full revelation level. It comes in a form of it's enclosed, like we spoke about, like that, just like Chachmei law of halacha is enclosed in the Ira Neshama of Bria Tzira, which gives it a body that we can talk to and relate and can ultimately evolve into halachas, aruchas lifnenu, halachas about Reuven and Shimon, or veshet, nikivas haveshet, like he said, the puncture in the esophagus, etc. Same thing a mitzvah. And it seems like a mitzvah is even higher because it's coming from Ratzon Elyon, but it doesn't distinguish that a mitzvah is beislapshus, atzmus beislapshus. That's what he's saying here. And the islapshus is in two levels: the mem Sadiq that replaces the yud k, exchanges, and the vav k that reveals it in a physical form. And now he's going to say in avodah what this is. And then, as I said, I'll explain, and then we'll stop. If anybody has questions. Uba avodas b'chinas mem tzadik. Uba avoda. It seems to say uba avodas Hashem or uba avoda. Okay, uba avodas b'chinas mem tzadik hu asiyas mitzvahs b'kabbalas el machal shamayim. The level of mem tzadik of mitzvah, which represents Yud K, is performing the mitzvahs with b'kabbalas el machal shamayim, which means that you're accepting the yoke of heaven. We learned this before. L'kayim ritzeni yizborach l'mayla mebchinas tainug. 1 minute. To perform the mitzvahs by Kabbalah Shalom Shamayim, we learned that was the level of the first kavana in Perek Mem Aleph. To perform the Ratzon Hashem, higher than the level of Tainug. Okay. Before I continue, I see here that this is another example of volume 3's language that is very brief. And the Rebbe Rashab is clearly writing it in like almost Roshei Prokim, like summarized language that needs to be fleshed out a bit. Because if you look at the language, you'll see it's like almost like a reshima, where it's like notes, and he did not spell it out completely. So let me do this a little slowly. But I want to first go back to the inyan of Kabbalah Shel Malchus Shamayim earlier, where he spoke about this, because he's now connecting it all back to what we learned earlier about this topic. I want to just see one thing. Perek Mem Aleph. Does anybody remember where he said that you need that the kavana of Kabbalah Sale is mamshich in Gan Eden Atachten, and the kavana, oh, I think I found it, and the kavana, the seid of it is mamshich in Gan Eden Elyon.
I think it's on 12:12.
Now there for sure, but there was also later. Yeah, 12:12 he brings right from Tanya exactly. Yeah, correct. Thank you. But I was looking for something else as well. 1 second. Okay, I'll look for it later.
Rabbi Yitzchak, it's amazing that you remember that right away.
Wow, it's not memory. It's digital functionality. I'm able to use the computer to search for words.
Fascinating.
But of course, I have to be able to read it to make sure it's what he's talking about. So it's not completely mindless.
Okay, let me just say this. I'm not sure what he means by Lamaylam B'chinas Tainug. First, I thought maybe you have to read it like this: which is Mepchinas Tainug, but I don't think he means that. Lamaylam B'chinas Tainug.
No.
Don't say no so fast, because Zotzen is not higher than Tainug. That's the thing. So that's why I'm wondering why he's saying Lamaylam B'chinas Tainug. Al Kaponim, Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim. It could be higher than the human Tainug, not the Tainug above. In other words, when you do a mitzvah and you have pleasure from it, so you're benefiting something from it. It could be he's saying here that Mem Sadiq is doing a mitzvah simply because God said so. Saying is Baruch L'maylam B'chinas Tainug Ha'odam, not Tainug L'maylam. That's maybe what he means. But I'm leaving it open because I'm not 100% sure. Let me just continue reading. Maybe it'll get clear. But anyway, he's teaching. So remember, Mem Sadiq is the Yud K of with Yud K that's concealed because it's Ratzon. Remember, we said that it's Ratzon Elyon Shalamayla Mechach Mabina. So he's talking about Kabbalah Sel Machar. It's saying he is Baruch Lamayla, higher than Tainug. V'chein hu b'kiyam ha-mitzvos ha'yidei hakdomas ava b'chol me'edecha. Commotion is bar le'il, and it seems like the parentheses ends after the word commotion is bar. So it's a parentheses within the parentheses. According to the footnote below, it looks like, and I agree, it probably belongs after commotion is bar le'il. That's similar to Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim. If you recall, he compared it already earlier as well. Let me just see where. What was at the bottom of a page. Yeah, here we go. On the bottom of page, the bottom of page 1271, he said that when you do mitzvahs, Kabbalos El Malchus Shamayim, the oil is still be concealed and it's not revealed, and therefore does not reveal the Gan Eden Elyon. That's what I was referring to. Whereas when you do it with Ava Rabba, the Tainugim, in other words, with great love and with pleasure, it's much more begili. That's what he said there. Now, I think that's what he's referring to here.
Not here. Here he's saying he's compelling them.
No, but then he qualified also. He says he could qualify it as well. 1 second. In one place he said Kabbalah Sel, but he said it's not. Oh, yeah. Look at the end of the paragraph on page 1271, the middle paragraph. He said, Yesh lemer the kamoy kain, they came on mitzvahs of Kabbalah Sel, mamshichem mebchinas sheresh ha-mitzvahs. Makol mokem, ikaram shachahu, bagdomas ava rabba, dozu b'chinas eishel shein, mamshichem b'chinas rotzen, as b'chinas mokem. So yes, Kabbalah Sel has an element of it, but it's much stronger. The Gili is stronger when you have also the Ava B'chol Me'edecha. So Kabbalah Sel, I would say, is more connects more to the concealed state because it's Ratzon Elyon. It says, yeah. So Ava B'chol Me'idecha is also similar to this level because it's beyond our capacity, B'chol Me'idecha. So it's like the Ratzon Elyon. And that's Mem Sadiq. What about the Vovke? Ubchinas Vovke, Mashamamshich Alav Kedushas Havaya. So the Yudke is where we surrender and we, in a sense, suspend ourselves to the Ratzon Elyon above, and also like Ava B'chol Me'idecha, beyond our faculties. Vovke is Hamshachet, Nigles, that your Mamshich, the person who's doing the mitzvah, Kedushas Havaya. Your Mamshich, the holiness of Havaya, internalizing it within you. So he says in Aveda, that's the two levels here. Till now, he didn't speak in Aveda. He just said that there's the Vovke, which is how the mitzvah manifests, and the Yudke is the concealed dimension. We call including the Ratzon Elyon, the root of the container is the root of the mitzvahs. Now he's saying the part of a mitzvah where you suspend yourself for Ratzon Elyon Kabbalah sale, as well as B'chol Me'idecha, that is Mem Tzadik, and the Vovke is where you're drawing down the holiness of the mitzvah to you, like when you take Lulav and Esrog, there's the Ratzon Elyon within it, and there's the Vovke, which is, as you internalize it, Lakachtem Lachem, you internalize the godliness of the mitzvah in the Havaya, mitzvah Havaya. And examine or delve into what it says elsewhere. Be'inyan mina meitzer karasi anani b'merchav. That when you call mina meitzer from the straits, from the dire straits, from a more what's mina meitzer? I said from the more constrained place. Anani b'merchav. So I'm assuming. Why is he bringing that? Mina meitzer karasi anani b'merchav. That probably mina meitzer karasi may be the Yudke and the Vovke is anani b'merchav. Meitzer the merchav. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's referring to with mina meitzer merchav. I have to look it up. And finally, b'ayim mashn is bar le'il b'inyan simcha shal mitzvah, and delve into what we learned earlier about simcha shal mitzvah. Shal mitzvah atzmus atainug mokar atainugim. The core of the pleasure, the source of all of the pleasures that we spoke about when we spoke about Simcha Shal Mitzvah, that reaches all the way into the Simcha and Tainug above. So, what the connection between these last two statements and what he said before? I need to think it through. I'm not positive. Is he saying that Simcha Shal Mitzvah is Yudke or Vovke? Probably. I'm not sure. There he says Ratzon. Now he says Tainug. Atzmus Tainug. Let me go back a moment to see the Simcha Shal Mitzvah piece. But you can see it's a lot of Eishes HaMachshava here that need to be somewhat fleshed out and explained. I don't get it in the first bounce here when I read it, but I will definitely look into it more. And
Can I ask a question?
Just a minute. Let me just finish what I want to say, and then I'll take as many questions as you guys like. 1 second. Shneim kecha davka. Simcha Tainug, oh boy.
On 1261, he talks about Simcha Shal Mitzvah reaches Atzmus.
No, I'm not looking for that. Anyway, what I do recall, I'll just say from my memory, he connected Simcha Shal Mitzvah with the Avodah of Ava Rabba, the Tainugim, and that was on page 1265, where he said, that's what he's referring to now. And we discussed that at length, how Ava Rabba B'Tainugim opens up and allows that Simcha Shal Mitzvah to manifest. But I'm going to go back. I have to go back and refresh my memory there because clearly it's a whole subject matter. Okay. I shall stop right now for any questions.
What is the difference between Yud-K and Vav-K? You said Vav-K is mamshich all of Kedushas Havaya. What is Yud-K?
I just explained suspending yourself, not about you. You suspend yourself to Ratzon Elyon, Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shemayim. B'chol Moedecha. You're going outside of yourself, beyond yourself, and Vav-K is Hamshacha within you, Kedushas Havaya, Beprimius into you.
So in Yud-K, it's not Nimshach Lamato yet.
That's what we learned. Hanistaris Lavaya Lekenu. It's still within the Mashpia. Yud-K is Chochma Bina. Vav-K, the Vav is Mamshich to Hey Achrena.
So my question relates to this. Is it fair to say that in each mitzvah you have a process of Rutz of a Shuv?
I don't know where you're getting Rutz of a Shuv here. He doesn't even mention that.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying if the Yud-K refers to Bittul and reaching above with your Kavana, and you're reaching to the highest levels, you're outside of yourself, you're reaching up. And the Vav-K is drawing it down, it's a Hamshacha. So the Rutzo is the Kavana going up and the Or of Atzmus, and the Hamshacha,
if it helps your understanding, if it helps your understanding, fine, but he doesn't use these terms here, and that may be deliberate. So it's fine to say it, but I don't know if that's what the Rebbe Rashab is saying.
If we're talking about the Yud, Hamshachas Mitzvahs, that means not only a CS a mitzvah, the technical, but including the Kavanah also, right?
Well, he didn't spell out yet what's the Kavanah, because that's going to come next, which is the Kavanah. I will say, however, in context of the Rotze B'Shuv, one thing I will qualify. Earlier, he did say that when you only have Kavanah, B'chol Moedecha, you're lacking, and Simcha Shal Mitzvah, it's all Halah, not Hamshacha. So in that sense, yes, the Rotze B'Shuv does come to play into that. In other words, like if you look on the page where he explained why do you need Maisa Mitzvahs and not just Simcha Shal Mitzvah. So in that context, so he said that on page where he spoke about this on why you need both. On page 1264. So he said the following. He said in the parentheses, he says like this. V'yeshlem et aveda b'simcha gam kishi b'madrega al yena k'mei ba'ava rabba b'tainugim ein ze geirem adayin ha-simcha l'mayla mepnei sheh b'chinas halo levad v'kavon al yena davkin shashuv sh'achar ha-rotzei v'al kein lo yiyem is adayin ha-simcha amitis. So yes, in that sense, you could say that that there's an element of that you need both. Just adding that into the equation.
Yeah,
that's what he said there.
I was remembering that. I couldn't have pinpointed it, but I was remembering that when I asked the question.
Okay. Then he continues there and he says, let me see. Shamitzah primus tzei primus tainig elyon. Amitzah kele hakel kol primus primus atzmus and shabbat. Was that you spell that? My name is up in Mitzvah committed the Shalom. Yeah, but the simcha with the mitzvah without simcha is behelam. With the simcha it comes be galus. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. And he also mentioned a lot earlier on chapter, on page rather, the word the Tanya Perik Nun was also a very significant point. On top of page 1247. Yeah.
I don't know if you heard what I said. I don't know if it was on.
What's that? On page 1247, he made the point that the Ava B'chol Ma'idecha, which is the state where you can't even speak, Chana doesn't even speak. So he says that's the Ava that leads to what he says, Samoin, the thirst, the Chelas Ava. Yes, Ava Zub B'chin Sarot Zub Madrig Achim B'chin Zav B'tanu Zub B'chin Sataynu B'chin Esek Atem B'chin. Yeah, top of 1247 is also relevant to this. But I'm going to review this a little more to understand it better. I know I didn't hear. What did you say?
We never spoke about something that it's not something that the Rabbi is emphasizing so strong about Simcho B'Taharoso. We did not explain it, right?
Well, the Rebbe, we're learning Ayin Beis. We're not learning the Rebbe Sikha.
No, I understand, but it's different. Just to
I don't know. I listen. I'm trying to understand Ayin Beis. It's complicated enough for me. He's trying to. I don't know if that's. I mean, I'm not sure how that Sikha comes into play here. You have a connection you want to make?
No, I just want to understand. It's different.
Anyway, I'm trying. I think once it's hard for me to compare it to something else if I don't understand what it says in Ayin Beis first. So I'm trying to first understand what the Rebbe Rashab is saying. Then you can go back to that sikha and see what he's referring to. I mean, the Rebbe is not shayl. Nowhere does it. Simcha needs mitzvahs also. He says here clearly you have to have mitzvahs. Okay. Any other questions? Let's go with that. Any questions? As I said, I need to study it again back what we learned earlier, but it's very clear. The general picture is pretty clear that a mitzvah goes together with kavana and the pnimius. So the Kabbalah Shel Malchus Shamayim is the Mem Sadiq. The Vavke is Mamshech Alav Kedusha Savaya. Both are through Maisa mitzvahs for sure. And Simcha Shel Mitzvah is Atzmus Atainu Mokar Atainugim. So I think the key line to keep in mind throughout, the Yesh B'zeh B'chinas B'emes Kol B'chinas Atzmus Rak Shabo B'chinas Islapshus. That with mitzvahs we have in it all Atzmus, but it manifests in a form of being enclosed. That I think is the real punchline here, relevant to the whole discussion. If you want, I can continue on right now, and I think things will become clearer as we go, or we can stop here. What do you guys think?
Let's do some more.
Okay. Next paragraph. And I really believe, as I said, as we go further, more will be understood, because as I said, the Rebbe Rashab writing here very densely. Va'acha kol hanal, the next paragraph on page 1276. Va'acha kol hanal, after all the above, Yuvon will be understood, the Kabbalah schar ala mitzvahs. Well, understood in the inyan that we've been discussing, the receiving reward or the energy, the divine energy on mitzvahs. Shazehu, this generating reward or gilei elikos is ma'isa mitzvahs b'poel mamash dafka. This is not on spiritual. Lo ala ruchni shalahem. This is not on the spiritual dimension of the mitzvahs, not on the kavana, and not on the avaviyir and the mitzvahs and everything. It's on the actual performance of mitzvahs. If you remember specifically on page 1212, he made that very clear. The mila of mitzvahs maisius over the avedis ha'avis and adam arishan. If you look at the top of page 1212, we were not commanded to do spiritual mitzvahs. We were commanded to do actual mitzvahs. So number one is the action of mitzvahs is vital here. So then what's the role of the ruchnis of the mitzvahs? The kavana, the intention, and all the feelings, the simcha, the joy, the ava rabba, tainugim, b'chol meidecha, mesiras nefesh. Rak tzarech liyas kavonas ha-mitzvahs, hu avedav b'chinas ru'usa delibo b'simcha shal mitzvah. However, in addition to the action, Hashem didn't just want us to do dry, hollow actions. As powerful as they are, the intention, there has to be also the intention within the mitzvah. And that's the Aveda with Rusa Deliba, the desire of the heart. Ubesimcha shal mitzvah, and with the joy that you perform a mitzvah with. Okay, so he's bringing it back to that topic, that you need both, but the Maisa Mitzvahs is the primary first thing, and then you need the neshama within it, so to speak. V'yituritz gamken hakushya, and with this we also answers the question al masha'oma schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka. The question he asked on top of page 1272. He said, how could you say there's no reward in this world? There's no reward for mitzvah in this world. Haloi yesh kabbalah schar gam achshav b'gan eden. Isn't it a fact that we also have now, what do you mean now, meaning not in the future after Mashiach comes. We have kabbalah schar also now in Gan Eden for the mitzvahs we do. V'gam lamata be'elam hazeh. And also more than that, below in this world, Kamesha Kosav, he's bringing back the verses he mentioned earlier, that when you'll follow Bichu Kesai, my laws, God's laws, you'll have reward. The law, and it goes back to the question, this is the third time he's repeating this question. Here on page 1276, back on 1272, and back on 1212. I think 1212. Yeah. Not 1212. Yeah. And also the question, and why are there only 5 things enumerated that a person eats from their fruit in this world? Isn't it all mitzvahs in that same category? So he says, now, I'll be what we learned, we answered that question, these questions. Liyes, this is the answer, because the B'chinas Yudke, the Shem Havaya, the mitzvahs Havaya, is because the name Yudke, the level of Yudke, in the Shem Havaya, in the name of Havaya, the mitzvahs. Remember, mitzvahs Havaya. Mitzvahs are called the mitzvahs of Havaya. They're the level of Havaya because they're dependent, like you said, they're connected to the letters of the Yudke Vovke on page 1274. So those letters, Yud K, Ba b'chiluf ad bash. They are come and they're exchanged through the exchange of ad bash to mem Sadiq. Al kain gozru. Al kain gozru eimer derech klal. The schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka. How do you read that? Rab Shlomo, King Gozru Eimer?
Gazru Oimer.
Huh?
Gazru Oimer. Like
Al
decided.
Kain Gozru. That's why Chazal they said Oimer derech klal. But they said Hey Dvorim is derech klal. The schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka.
How do you read Gozru Eimer?
Al Kain, that's how I understand it. Al Kain Gozru, that's why they said it in sort of like a gzeira, definite way. Oimer derech klal, what they saying is derech klal. Aschar mitzvah behai al maleka.
Is that a common language? A King Gozru Eimer and then say
No, but it's accepted. It's not common, but it's accepted. It makes sense.
Gozru means usually exeda. They decreed, like they made a statement.
That's they said schar mitzvah behai al maleko.
No. That I understand, but he could have said al kain omru derech klal the schar mitzvah behai al maleka.
It's not common.
Okay, fine. But you just said something. I think Yuval. What you said? There's an expression like that. Gazru Eimer.
Gazru Oimer, it's like to decide or to determine.
Determined. Okay, fine. I remember seeing such an expression. Okay, I mean the teichen is understood. I got the idea is clear. Al kain gazru eimer derech klal in general the schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka, and that's why they said schar b'hai al maleka because you don't see it. It's concealed in the mem Sadiq. That's what it seems like he's saying. B'hainu the dehine because now schar mitzvah, the schar of a mitzvah is mitzvah. The amitis ashkar shal mitzvah, a mitzvah atzma. The true reward for a mitzvah is the mitzvah itself. V'hainu she's gala mitzvah kamoshi b'shoshem mekeda atzmi b'chinas atzmus ein sof. So the reward for the mitzvah is not a second thing. The mitzvah itself, which means that you're revealing the mitzvah as it is in its root and its source, in its core root and source in Atzmus Ein Sof. In other words, if you didn't do the mitzvah, that part of it would be concealed. You're revealing the way it is Shosha Mekeda, the Ikara mitzvah, Ibchinis Yudke Sheba mitzvah. And the primary element of a mitzvah in its source is the Yudke in the mitzvah. Ukamoshin is Bar Le'il, like I explained earlier, that's like the Eir as it revealed to himself in the Mashpia. That's the root of the mitzvahs above. Being that the mitzvahs is the Ratzon Elyon that's higher than Chachma, like he said before, higher than the Yud, higher than Chachma. Which in general is Sevav Kalalman, the transcendent energy that doesn't go into Kalim. The Bisharshe that transcends, the Bisharshe B'chinas Atzmus Erein Sof, in a root that's Atzmus Erein Sof, Shekedem Aleis HaRotzen, that precedes arising in his desire, because that he said was already Eiris, not Kalim, not the root of the Kalim, but Kumeshel is Bar Le'il Sib Divra Maskal Nosea Aleph. Like he said, like we learned earlier in Nosea Aleph, which is in volume 1. Yeah. Begam, and interesting, the end of the parentheses, this is not very common by the Rebbe Rasha. By the Rebbe, it's very common. Begam, another thing, Liyah Shem Mitzvahs. So there's a Liyah, because Mitzvahs are Ratzon Elyon Sevav, okay. Liyah Shem Mitzvahs B'chinas Kalim, the Shoshon L'mayla Ma'eres. I'll explain in a moment how you reconcile that it's Sevav Kalam and Kalim. Being that Mitzvahs are the level of Kalim, which is rooted higher than the Oir, is the core and essence of Eir Ein Sof Baruch Hu. V'gam, even higher, Mibchinas Helam Ha'Oir, Mibchinas Helam Ha'atzmi, the Shmoya Atzmi HaKol B'Atzmusei Kanal, and even higher, the concealment of the Oir, and even the core, essential, fundamental concealment in the Shmoya Ha'atzmi, which is Kol B'Atzmusei, encompassed in Atzmus, the Kol Zeh Ba'achshav B'chiluf the Adbash. All this now, we don't see. It comes through an exchange of Adbash, and the future will be revealed. So basically he's saying that's why Schar Mitzvah, Schar Mitzvah, Mitzvah. The Schar of Mitzvah is revealing the essence of a mitzvah all the way in this highest levels. Sevav Kamen, all the way to the Kalim, all the way to Helam Ha'atzmi, as he just enumerated. And since that's not revealed now, that's why there's no Schar in this world, in general. It's only revealed through the Adbash, Memtzad. La'asid Lavi, it will be revealed. That like it says that the Kved Havaya, Hainu Shem Havaya Shebe Mitzvos, that the glory of Havaya will be revealed. That what Havaya is that? That's the Havaya of the Mitzvos will be revealed. Ki Izgala Eishis Yudke Shebe Mitzvah. Then will be revealed the Yudke in the Mitzvah, in the Mem Sadiq. V'lo Yastir Halavush the Mem Sadiq. And the garment of Mem Sadiq will not cover it up. Like it says that your master, Meirecha, will no longer be concealed with a kanaf, with a garment, with a shirt or a garment and a lavush. And your eyes will see. You'll actually see the mahus, which now cannot be seen. Only through the garment of Mem Tzadik. Okay, pretty heavy, right? V'zeu Shomer Razal, and this is what Razal say, Asidim. It says, should say it's Asidim Yikru, but Sadikim. Asidim Sadikim, in the future, the righteous. Sheyikru b'shmei shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they will call out, declare the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Upirish Rashi, and Rashi says, Sheyir Shmo Mavai. No, they will be named. I'm sorry, you're right. They will be named. Sheyikru, they will be called by the name Shem Havaya of the Eibishter. And Rashi says, Sheyir Shmo Mavaya. They will be called by the name Havaya. V'hainu, what does that mean? The Hainu, this means that Tzadikim HaMekayim Torah Mitzvos, the righteous that perform Torah Mitzvos, Yishmam Havaya, their name will be Havaya, Mepnei Sheyizgala B'chinas Havaya Shebemitzvos Sheyir Begili Mamash. Because the Havaya and the Mitzvos, including the Yudke, will be revealed, Mamash, literally revealed. Vigam Yizgala, and also will be revealed B'chinas Helam Ha'ir, or B'chinas Helam Ha'atzmi. So not only will it be revealed the Gili, the Ir Atzmi, but also the Helam Ir and the Helam Atzmi. Shazeo B'chinas Eiden Ilah. This is the level of Eiden Ilah Stima, the concealed higher level of Eiden. And it says, no eye never saw this except God. No one have ever seen this concealed state of Eiden Ilah. Because it's Helam Atzmi. It's a fundamentally concealed level. It's not subject to revelation. And yet it will be revealed, as it's written at length, and this is the beginning, the Drush Yom Tov Sharash Hashanah Hanal, in Samach Vav. In the Drush Yom Tov Sharash Hashanah Tofrei Samach Vav, like he mentioned in the beginning, the end of the paragraph on page 1275.
Except the Rashbi make.
That this will be the primary revelation in the future. I feel, even though it would be nice to continue reading, I feel I should stop here because There's a lot here to process here. So briefly, what he said now, he essentially brings it all back together, that you need to have the Maisa Mitzvahs in this world. You need the Kavana for it to be revealed in the fullest sense of the word, but the revelation does not happen in this world primarily, but in general. It'll happen in the future. He still has to explain what do we have in Gan Eden then. But remember, in Gan Eden, it's not Atzmi. Gan Eden is the Kavana. It says the revelation of Giluyim, of Ur. The real revelation of the Sheresh HaKelim, of Mitzvos, as in the Ratzon Elyon, that's L'mayla Mechachma, and Kedem Alei Saratzon, all the way to the Etzem HaUr and Helam HaUr and Helam Atzmi. That is Lasud Loving. So he didn't spell it out yet, but he's going to spell it out. How that fits, but we're getting now the picture that this mitzvahs that we do now reach all the way to that Etzem, but the Etzem right now is in the form of Yud-K, is in Mem Sadiq, and only we have the Gili of Vav-K, even though the Vav-K is also Bepnimius as the Yud-K, but it's still in the form of a garment called Mem Sadiq. Okay. Any questions? He's not finished the subject. We're still in the middle. He's going to continue talking about Lasud Love, how. So let me just explain a few things here. First of all, remember there's a few tracks going on here at the same time. Mitzvahs are rooted in the highest levels, we know, but they're also rooted in the highest level of Ur, Pnimius Ur. Higher than that, Helam Ur, Pnimis Etzem HaUr, Helam HaUr, and then Helam HaAtzmi. So it's not a contradiction to say that the mitzvahs, like the Kalim, are rooted in Sevav Kalalman, but then when you go deeper, it's rooted even higher than that, all the way in the Helam HaAtzmi. And what we have at Poel Mamish is that the mitzvah will also have a form of revelation. There is some form of Gili. That's why it's connected to Ur. But its primary connection is all the way to the root of the Kalim and the Etzem and the Helam HaAtzmi. So that's why it's not. That's why he says both things. You'll have the revelation of the core energy, which today is concealed because it's only the Yud-K within the Mashpia. But we'll even have that's like the Gili of V'yadaita Yom V'ashavesa Levacha Ke'avayu Elekim, but not Enoid. And then we're going to have the revelation of the very concealment itself. We'll see that that is God's power. That too will be revealed. Not only, in other words, the Yud-K, but also the Helam HaAtzmi, which is even higher than Yud-K. The Kaitzah Shiur, as he put it, which is all the way in the Helam of what he calls the Ratzon Elyon, that's higher than the Gili of Chachmim. Yeah. Okay. Questions?
Heavy stuff.
We're going to talk more about this Helam. What does it mean that Helam becomes revealed? It seems like a contradiction of terms. Helam Atzmi becomes revealed. Does it mean it becomes revealed like regular revelation? Or it means it expresses a divine power? Or does it mean that it's a level that's beyond Gili and Helam? And therefore it's not like Gili, which is a level of Gili, and Helam is a concealment of that, but something that's beyond both, and therefore it could both be Helam and Gili at once. So we'll talk about this more.
Simcha Shal Mitzvah is not able to reach that deepest level, the Helam Atzmi, is it?
Doesn't look like it. The mitzvah part, yes. The simcha part needs the mitzvah, and the mitzvah needs the simcha.
Right, but the Helam Atzmi that will only be revealed, the Yud-K that's now being revealed as Mem Sadiq, that's accessible.
Well, I'd wait till we finish the subject. There's another few pages before we conclude. He's going to say more about this. if you read on right now, the bottom of this page and next page, he's going to tie it all together.
And remember what we learned about Ekya? How does that relate to this at all? This Ekya, I'm having trouble. Is there any relationship with that, or is that a totally different subject? A higher name.
I said, I'm trying to focus on understanding what he says here before I make connections.
Okay.
It's probably, maybe, I don't know. You're talking about Achesi Imi, Achesi Biti, Achesi Imi. That's what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Well, I think he's going to come back to that at some point. He's going to talk about Neshamas HaMashpia and Torah. That's going to be that discussion at some point. We'll get back to it. Okay. So let's stop here, right?
Yes,
I
thank
think
you for going further.
What?
I said, thank you for taking the extra 15 minutes. It was nice to get some integration, although I know there's some open strands here.
You can see it's going to be quite valuable to learn the whole thing over from the beginning. There's a lot going on here. I see the Rebbe Rashab is tying everything together. Just for the record, we're doing something that very few do. Most people, when they get to volume 3, they give up.
I think that after all of these years with the learning, when there's a second time learning, it's completely a different understanding.
100%. That I can. That's for sure.
I've heard stories that some people give up a lot earlier than volume 3.
That's also true. Okay, but we're not giving up. No. We haven't come this far to give up.
Chas v'shalom. As the fellow said in one of the recent broadcasts for your fundraise-a-thon, or maybe it was a Sunday night shiur, you're the cosmic tour guide.
Yeah. Okay.
We can't lose our
I
tour
could
guide.
tell you
We'll be
right now,
lost.
the more I think about what we've learned, is a little overwhelming. There's a lot going on here between the Ava Rabba and the Tainugim and the Mitzvos. I mean, I need to go back and read this again. The last 20 pages probably. Because though I have the general gist of it, the theme, the thread, but there's a lot of details here. Many details. Okay.
It would be a fascinating thing. You should write a book with all the details. It's amazing.
And I'll tell you something. This piece about Mem Sadiq and Yud K, I found originates in a mimer from the Alter Rebbe, Tov Kuf Samach Beis, Sukkos, where he says it, essentially what it says here, but when you read this, you see it comes alive in a completely different level. I do suspect that this is taken from the Mittler Rebbe, who elaborates on that, but I'm not sure. I haven't found it yet.
Where is the Alter Rebbe's mimer that you're referring to?
Tov Kuf Samach Beis, page 27. In my Moriad Murazokin, Tov Kuf Samach Beis is the year.
Okay,
That'll be
thank you.
5562. Sukkos.
I'll see if I can find it and post it, Lena, for everybody. And then you say the Mittler Rebbe expanded on that? Where would I find that?
That I haven't found yet. I feel that's the case, but I haven't found it yet.
Okay, well, that'll be my homework. I'll see if I can find it for you.
Tov Kuf Samach Beis, just for the record, is the year 1801.
That was immediately after the Alter Rebbe was freed the second time. And then was the Kitrug of Chassidus more than the first time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's